welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza, and so happy that you're here. If you're watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, do us a favor if you don't mind sharing that on your page. If you're watching us on YouTube, would you mind scrolling down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll let you know every time there's a new show on the page. Remember, we have shows on Wednesday with Christian and Daniel, Fridays, the Card Devo, on Saturdays, Put It Together. And on Mondays, you can find horoscopes for the week on there. So make sure that you hit the notification bell. It'll let you know what's going on. This week, I am really excited. I have there's a certain group of friends that come back to the show, and some of these guests I've interviewed when I had the podcast. So for those of you that remember and have followed me since then, this used to be a podcast, and we went on to live streams at the beginning of the lockdowns. So our friend Ray Buffer was on the show several years ago, and we were talking about when, and I think it was about 2014 or 2015. I think it was 2014 when he came on the show. But let me tell you a little bit about him. Ray Buffer was born in 1969, and he's an American actor and singer. Buffer discovered his talent first in music, playing violin at an early age, and then progressing to other instruments. Theater became his passion when he reached high school. During the 1990s, Buffer produced and directed theater as well as appearing in regional and dinner theater productions. In 1999, Buffer moved from Orlando, Florida, where he had been working as an actor in various theaters and theme parks across the country, into Huntington Beach, California. In 2007, he left a position as a general manager of Long Beach Opera to start his own theater company in San Pedro, California. The Relevant Stage, which produced mostly musical theater, worked until 2011. In 2014, he again launched a new theater company with business partner Jonas Sills called Art in Relation. He continues to work in television, film, and theater, but with a deep, resonant, and powerful voice. Is also a busy concert soloist and a voiceover artist. And with that, let me bring on to the screen Mr. Ray Buffer. Hello, sir.
Hey there, Daniel. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Long time no see, as we were saying before the show.
I know. And it's, first off, like, you're one of the few, I would say, repeat that comes back to the show. So I'm really excited about that.
Thank you. And I think you said to me, too, I'm your final 5 o'clocker. So
you are. For those of you watching, all through 2020 and 2021, we had 2 air times. We had a noon and a 5 o'clock episode. But moving on in 2022, we're only going to have the noon show. But Ray is like the godfather of saying goodbye to the 5 o'clock show. But I'm glad you're here, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, well, it's an honor. Thank you. It's good to see you again. And, for your listeners and viewers, you and I worked together. When you mentioned the Relevant Stage, one of the shows I produced back in the day was The Last 5 Years. Yeah. Jason Robert Brown musical. And we did something interesting with it in that we had the live action actors on stage, but then we also had a photography element projected in the scenery. And you were part of the photography element. You were the producer in the Kathy storyline, and you appeared as a theater a Broadway producer in our photography.
That was a really cool shoot. So for those of you, so while the action is going on stage during a part of the play, up on the big screen, there's these photos of the character coming in for an audition, and I get to play one of the producers, and we're just doing all these like nasty faces that are being very judgmental, which is not difficult for me, by the way. But and I was telling Ray that I have those pictures in a file on my computer, but I didn't have enough time to go look for them. But I will find them and I will post them. So, it's crazy for me to think that we do go way back, because that was early on. I mean, looking at the bio, that was very early on when I first moved out to California. So It was one of the first projects that I did when I moved here.
Yeah, that must have been around 2010, 2011, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Prior to our interview for Frankenstein that we did back in 2014 or so. So yeah, it's been a journey, and since then, the theater thing has kind of taken a been put on the back burner thanks to this pandemic that we're in. So in the last 2.5 years, I've been focusing a lot more on film and TV and voiceovers.
So one of the cool things that we're doing on this on the new season here of put together is that I have the bios at the beginning, which I wasn't doing when I was doing the podcast. I didn't read bios. So I like there's stuff when I read your bio when you sent it to me, I'm like, I didn't know he did this. I didn't know he did that. So there's so much to Ray Buffer. So with that said, I'm gonna stop talking and Ray Buffer, tell us how you put it together.
How I put it together. Well, I'm originally from Florida, as you said in my bio. I went to school at FAU. I majored in musical theater performance. I minored in music theory, composition. From there, I started working pretty regularly in the regional and the dinner theater circuit. And I spent my last 5 years in Orlando, surrounded by all these theme parks. So I was working all the time, contract to contract, either for Disney or SeaWorld or Universal or an old. There was a defunct scare house called Skull Kingdom that's since been torn down. And then I was a stage manager as well as a performer. So I was working really constantly. And then I moved to California and I had to kind of start over because I didn't have that network, and I found it really hard to actually to break into theater once I moved here in 2000 and really had to go back to doing the survival jobs, the retail jobs that just kind of pay the bills. And, that was 20 years ago. And it was a time when I felt that you either had to work 40 hours plus a week doing some kind of salary job, or you were homeless and an artist, and what I would do is I would do the survival job for 2 years, and then I'd burn out, and I have to do something artistic for a couple of years. Then I'd burn out from that and go back to the survival gigs. So I was a flip-flopper back and forth all through the early 2000s. I did, background work with central casting and, try to work my way into different things at that time. But nothing really took off. I had a stint on Curb Your Enthusiasm. I thought, hey, this might be my break, and nothing. It just fizzled, and I had to go back to survival jobs. So it's been a journey, and it wasn't until I started producing the theater that we talked about, and getting some experience in the directing, producing, and the whole enchilada, that I began to realize maybe I can survive and not have to go back to these 40-hour jobs. And then the gig economy happened. And now I've got 4 or 5 little part-time jobs that, if things dry up and an audition needs to happen, I can move these little survival jobs around. They're very flexible, but they help me pay the rent, but they don't obligate, the right side of my brain to having to survive. I can still keep the left side of my brain functioning. So it's like a perfect balance. And I wish it existed 20 years ago. So now I do the self-tapes, I do the auditions, I do the callbacks. And the biggest thing I do is I forget about the auditions. And that's been such a godsend, because one of the things an artist, anyone does in this industry, is they haunt themselves. Oh, did they see my audition? When are they going to call me? Oh, I'm perfect for this. Why haven't they called me yet? I don't play those games. So I forget about it. I throw away the sides. And it sounds egotistical or arrogant, but when they call me many times, I'm like, who is this? What is it for? Because I've out of sight, out of mind. I've forgotten about it. I've moved on to the next day. And
There's one thing that before you continue, there's one thing that, and I'm really glad you brought it up, that folks don't realize that for a lot of us who have not made it like to that top tier, you still have to do regular jobs. Like some people have serving jobs, some people work in stores.
yeah,
I did promotional gigs, marketing gigs. So you have to continuously like hustle, but it also works as a great networking tool, doesn't it?
it does. It does. I don't really blur them too much. I kind of keep my survival jobs separate from my artistic jobs, um, but it's nice when I can strategize them. So, say for instance, I have an audition in Burbank, I can also book a survival job, a little 4-hour gig in Burbank. So, maybe I'm getting paid mileage to go there, and I'm doing my audition at the same time. So it's like a two birds in one stone
Yeah.
kind of thing. That's the nice thing about the flexibility of the gig economy. But yeah, forgetting about the auditions, and it was the big step. And now my next challenge is forgetting about the product. You do the work, you get paid for it, the check comes, but then now you're waiting for the project to come out. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it hits the floor, you never see it. And sometimes it takes them a year, 2 years to edit it, to put it through the film festival circuit, or find distribution on Amazon or
Yeah.
Netflix or wherever. So that's my next challenge, is because I want to see the work I've done so I can decide if it's good enough quality that I can increase my marketing and show what I can do and the different characters that I can play. So
So coming from theater, working in television, doing films, how as an actor do you have to transition? Is it different? Is it a different beast that you have to work with?
I think it is. I mean, I always find it a challenge because I have a naturally resonant voice, and my trainings made me articulate everything a certain way, and sometimes that comes across as too strong for a smaller lens. So for the stage, I have to remember to really push it out there, and for the TV and film, I have to try to turn it off. I have to try to be natural. And the hard thing is that this is the way I normally talk. So this is my natural. So I
This is
almost
not
have to
mixed
create,
feelings, folks. This is not for television. This is
yeah,
real.
I almost have to create a new natural, like an undernatural or something. I have to tone it way down sometimes. Um, and that's just one of those growing pains you do. Every job you learn from. And I'm a firm believer that work begets work. So when people see that you're working, they offer you more jobs. So
So you having this energy and this love for the arts, entertainment, is that something that comes from the family? Like, are there entertainers in your family?
not necessarily. I think it's probably a psychological thing in part because I'm adopted, and I was adopted when I was 29 days old by a loving couple in Green Acres, Florida. Um, Raymond and Delana Buffer. They're both deceased. Um, and they raised me as an only child. And one of the things about adoptees is they have this. It's said that they have this feeling of fear of rejection, or a need to be accepted. So I think that feeds into the whole actor psychology as well. So probably from a young age, I always knew I was adopted. So maybe subliminally or subconsciously, some of that fed into the drive that I had to perform, or to be at times the class clown, or to get attention. So yeah, I mean, is that the answer you're looking for?
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of wondering, like, if there some people there's come from a lineage of actors or singers, and it's just kind of what you grow into. Because nobody in my family was into entertainment either. Everybody, there's no television people, uh, so it was just when I went into it, we're like, how did you get into that? I'm like, because I love attention. But I think for me, it's because I was the baby of the family. My parents were in their 40s when they had me, and I had nephews 4 years younger than me. So I felt like the middle child sometimes because I didn't get the attention that I thought I needed.
So
So yeah,
you had to do something to stand out.
yeah. So if my parents were going to pay attention, somebody was going to. Somebody,
Right.
but I started doing stuff since I was in kindergarten. There's pictures of me in kindergarten performing on little recitals or whatever. But I'm right up front. I'm the kid up front. So yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. Um, I don't
The funny thing about the profession, about in my the way I fit into it, because I'm big and I'm tall. I'm 6'4", and I've got some mass. The high school football coaches were always after me to be on the team, and I was not into athletics. I didn't want to be a football player. I actually was the kid in high school who um, exaggerated their migraines to the doctor, so he would write a note that actually allowed me not to take PE, but to have an extra elective. So I was the kid who was in orchestra, band, chorus, and jazz choir all in the same year. I had 4 electives and 3 core subjects. So that was me. So yeah, I mean, being big and tall, I get typecast a lot. I normally play like thugs or security or cops or bad guys. So the challenge for me is to try to show other facets of my abilities and maybe play against type, play opposite characters. So, if I'm between jobs now and there's a low paying or like a SAG low budget student film, but it stretches me or shows me in a different light, I'll try to get on that project so that I can expand my reel. And again, going back to what I said earlier, work begets work. So I just think that if you can just put yourself out there, you're going to persist.
For everybody watching, we are talking to actor and singer Ray Buffer, and we're talking from entertaining, finding our space, and he brought up his adoption. I'm gonna ask you more about that in just a minute.
Sure.
But make sure that if you are watching us, if you want to ask a question or join the conversation, just post your comments, whatever channel you're watching on, and I'll make sure that we post them on. Can we talk a little bit about the adoption process?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
there's I edited it just for everybody. Sometimes just for time, we edited a little bit of the bios. But you did mention it in the original bio that you sent me regarding your adoption, correct?
Right.
At what age, if I may ask, at what age did they tell you that you were adopted?
Well, I always knew, so I don't really know what age I was. I was adopted at 29 days of age, and I'm sure that from the very beginning they must have told me, because I do know that in 4th grade I had a teacher, Mrs. Wazalewski, who during show and tell, I announced to the class that I was adopted. And she shut me down right away. And she said, Raymond Ernest Buffer Jr., I know that you are not adopted. I've met your parents, and your head is full of soup. Go to the principal's office. So I went to the principal's office. I explained to the principal what was going on, and my parents came down, and the principal called my teacher into the office, and they confirmed that I was adopted, and she had to apologize to me there and then also to me in front of the class. And we spent the next day talking about what adoption was and why it happens and what it means, and that I had parents who really did want me a lot, and maybe for one reason or another couldn't have children of their own, and that made me very valuable to them, and so we talked about what that means to families. But I always remember my head was full of soup.
I'm pretty sure the teachers aren't around anymore. If not, we'd be like, suck it, look what he is now. How does, it might sound like a dumb question, but I feel like I want to ask it. How does all that emotion and all those feelings, like from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're at peace, you're comfortable, it didn't really affect you, or did it affect you? And can you use that energy in your acting?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I'm not sure. I'm sure I do connect to some of it in my acting, but throughout my youth, I felt very different from my adoptive parents, and I think it fueled me. We talked about survival jobs. I think it fueled me to actually become a private investigator licensed in the state of Florida for a short time. Because I remember one incident when I was 18. I decided I'm an adult. I can go to Good Samaritan Hospital and I can tell them that I want my birth records. And when the nurse there asked me for my mother's name, and I said, well, I don't know her name because the records are sealed. Um, and she started laughing at me. I remember crying, an 18-year-old boy crying, going back into the elevator because I was getting shut down and rejected in this quest to find my truth. And I think that fueled me to become a private investigator. And even though the skills I learned weren't sufficient to do my own search, I ended up hiring a group called Kinsolving, who eventually got my records, and it led to me meeting the maternal side of my family in the early 2000s.
What does that do spiritually, emotionally, to find that connection? Because I would think, and I'm going to say this because I feel like a lot of us at some point in our lives as kids were like, I must be adopted because I'm nothing like the rest of my family. Um, but I think like for me, my parents were in their 40s when they had me. So by the time I was 10, they were in their 50s. So there was a big generational gap between us. And it was very hard to connect with them, especially them being immigrants, me being, moving to the States. Anyway, long story. But once I got to meet more of my own family and realized like, oh, I'm not like my dad or my mom. I'm more like Uncle so-and-so. But that's like immediate. Like you go to a family reunion and they're there. How did that reunion or finding your birth mom, how did that affect you? Did you notice things that you're like, now I know that where that comes from?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and prior to that, just growing up in high school, my friends knew I was adopted, and they knew I was curious to find, information about my birth family. And when I would go on trips to like Disney to sing with the choir or with the orchestra, I would see other students from other schools. And there was one time I saw one kid, and a friend of mine pointed him out. He was like my doppelganger. He looked very similar to me. And it's like when you're an adoptee and you are searching, you kind of look at everyone like, are you related to me? Are you related to me? So that mystery went away when I was able to at least match up with my maternal side of the family. And the first person I talked to was actually my aunt who lived here in California. Um, and I saw her first when I knocked on her door with yellow roses and explained who I was. We sat down, talked for 3 or 4 hours. She gave me the whole foundation of what had happened with the family and what her sisters were doing, what my birth mother was doing. And it was very nice. But yes, instantaneously when I saw her, I had seen pictures actually before knocking on her door, but seeing her in person, it was like a female version of me, God forbid.
Yeah.
But just seeing that on the other side of the door, was a blessing. And yeah, it answered a lot of questions. It made me feel more connected to the world, not like a strange visitor from another planet.
That's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing. I know that's pretty intimate, but I know people who are watching who are adopted, and I'm sure there's a connection there that makes sense. So,
and there are a lot of adoptees who don't ever want to search. They're perfectly happy. They have no questions. They don't want to dig up anything. And yeah, each adoptee needs to make choices for themselves. There's no right or wrong, I don't think.
That's pretty cool.
But when I did meet my birth mother, she thanked me for finding her. And I think there are a lot of birth parents out there who relinquish children to adoption, and they're kind of convinced by people in their circle to move on and to forget. And they never do forget. And when she hugged me and she thanked me, I knew that it was genuine. So
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. For anybody out there who is searching, find where you come from. It's always, I know some other stories that's similar to yours, and you can always tell when they've reached that point. Like there is regardless of the outcome, there is a peace of mind that comes to it. Let me have a comment on the board. thank you for sharing your adoption story. I am adopted. I can relate directly to your story. See,
Very cool.
So I'm glad. Uh, so let's move back to entertainment. Um, I find because you do so many things, do you have a preference? Because like here on the show, we tagged you as actor and singer, but like you're so much more than that. Do you have? Okay, I'm gonna ask the dumb question that almost every interviewer does. If you had to pick one thing to do for the rest of your life, which one would you pick? Or maybe nobody's asked you that. Okay, yes, I'm the first one.
I think acting, probably acting. Yeah, because whether I intended to or not, it turned out that, when I started the relevant stage, and in some part art and relation, when I partnered up to do projects under that umbrella, I ended up casting myself in stuff that I really wanted to do. The first couple of shows I did with the relevant stage that I produced or directed, I wasn't in. But then I started thinking, well, I have a company and I have these shows I really would like to do, and why not? I'll just precast myself in a couple things and then bring everyone else in, and I wanted to act, and that's still what I want to do, but there are a lot of successful A-list actors out there who produce their own stuff so they can control it and make sure it's of a sufficient quality. And I think that's kind of where my mind was as well.
Cool. For those of you, I've seen him directing, and he's really good at directing. So just to put that out there. Not because he's on my show, I don't want to kiss, but I've seen him, so he's good. And that play was really good, by the way. So I'm just going to say that.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a fun show, but again, Jamie was not a thug or a cop or a security guard. He was he was like a writer, a Jewish writer, so it's like it was a stretch. It was a different kind of role for me to play and for me to sing, but it was fun. And I enjoyed putting that together.
So we're coming up on the half hour of the show. So for everybody's watching, we are talking to our friend, actor and singer Ray Buffer, and we talked adoption, we talked acting. How did you manage? A lot of folks gave up on acting or just stepped away or moved when the pandemic came around and we went into lockdown. How did you manage through it or managing through it?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I worked more than a lot of people did that I knew. I was hearing from friends, wow, I haven't booked anything in months. And it's like, things just kind of took off for me during 2019 and 2020. And, I was booking commercials, some big like SAG commercials. And, I was getting a lot of, I did a pilot for Snapchat and, some really different off the beaten path kind of projects, but it was steady. And when things picked back up at the beginning of last year, that time period where we all were told we don't have to wear a mask anymore, and we had like that 2 or 3 months, things went dead. I stopped getting jobs, and it's like, but everyone else started working again. And so, but then March of last year and on, it's been pretty steady again. But I have no idea how the sands of time work in my favor or against me, but all I can do is just keep persisting, keep trying to work, keep putting myself out there.
Yeah, definitely. Because I did a pilot and I did a short film during 2021, a couple of comedy shows, and so you just don't know. And I think a lot of people don't know. Like, you come into acting, and I think, well, for me, I came from Texas. Coming from Texas to California, and I had this vision of how it was supposed to work based on stories and based on how it was working in Houston. And then you get here and you realize, I'll tell you just quick, like in Houston, there were like 5 or 6 actors that we all kind of looked alike. So when the call would come out, we all knew we were all going to show up, and we usually grabbed a bite afterwards because we were all there for the same audition. Then I moved to California, and the first audition that The first big audition that I had was for a Bud Light commercial, and they were looking for Latinos about my. I show up, and there's like 100 guys that look like me, and it's like, whoa! And obviously, they all knew what they were doing. It was my first time in California doing anything, so I show up like la 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 la. Here I am, and like all these people there. So I think over the years, you kind of just have to learn that you don't really know what's going to happen, right?
Right. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, this, what we're doing now, this teleconferencing thing, the self-tape procedure that we do now as actors, it's really changed. It's been a game changer. And, I mentioned earlier my typecasting issues and that I play certain characters frequently. Two of those characters that I play frequently are Santa Claus and Frankenstein. And going back to Work Beginning Work, I was actually on the set of a movie called A Screenshot for Santa, directed by Monica Floyd. It's got Essence Atkins, Shay Moss, who's like the daughter of Bow Wow, the singer, Tori Hart, the ex-wife of Kevin Hart, and Tony Rock, the brother of Chris Rock. So it has some decent names associated with this film. So I'm on the set of this film playing Santa Claus, and I get a casting from my agent that they needed by today a self-tape of me, preferably dressed as Santa Claus. It was perfect. So I submitted it in the costume and makeup on set that it was already professionally put together. So I really looked, premium Santa, and sent it out and got it. It was like a Nickelodeon music video thing. But, that's the way things kind of Work Beginning Work. They just kind of click together. And separately, I did because when you interviewed me, we were producing Frankenstein, a new musical. So we did some non-makeup, non-traditional Frankenstein versions for the musical on stage. But since that time, I've played Frankenstein for California Walnuts for a commercial. And someone saw a photographer named, what is her name? I think I have it here. I want to get it right. Anastasia Augustin. She saw, I guess, the California Walnuts commercial online. And so she contacts me because she's doing a fine art photography exhibit in which she wanted me to model as Frankenstein, but the Universal Studios classic Frankenstein. So went in for 3 or 4 hours of makeup, had a nice little gig. But again, because they'd seen my work doing it somewhere else, and putting it out there got me another job. So, it's not just auditioning, but it's marketing. You've got to be your own marketer. You've got to put the stuff out there to be seen.
I think that's a perfect example of when people say there is no small job. Like you just don't know where some of these things will lead. It'll just take it from one thing to another. I did an MC job for a school in Venice one year, must have been like 2013, 2012. And it just happened that a director, his son was in that school. We were on stage being silly, and I was laughing with the kid. I didn't know who the kid was, and just being me silly. And then I had a Domino's commercial that I had gotten one of the backgrounds, but like a week later, showed up to the shoot, and the director recognized me from that, but made sure that they pushed me up to the front. So even though I wasn't the lead in the commercial, I was like, I want to make sure that they see him. And he was like, I remember you. And I was like, oh, cool. But just people were like, how does he, why is he being so nice to you? I didn't want to tell anybody, but I'm like, because I was nice to his kid. Like, that's how things happen. Just put yourself in the right position, in the right place. We have another question for you.
Okay.
How did you break into voiceover work?
Well, back in Florida, I did some work for some video games. There was a studio in Orlando that hired me on a few occasions. And then I didn't really do any for about, 15, maybe 20 years. And when I was here and I finally had gotten a manager and an agent, one of the first gigs I did was for the American Red Cross. They hired me to sing the part of eyebrows. So as a guy looking in a mirror and his eyebrows get animated and start to sing. And so I was the voice of his twitchy eyebrow in a Red Cross smoke alarm commercial. That was a PSA. Again, work begets work. So I put that up on YouTube. I showed that I did it. I put a reel together. I also found some scripts of other commercials, AM, PM, and such things. And I re-recorded them where I was creating all of the vocals and put those up to create a reel. And I use that in my profiles on all the various casting sites. And then I submit it and I get booked. So, I some projects I do, like I did a Santa Claus gig for Yankee Candle. They decided, hey, after we shot everything video-wise, we need some more audio. So then they extend my contract and I do voiceover work for them as Santa. And then that leads to other jobs. So getting cast isn't about talent sometimes. It's really about, are you easy to work with? And I think a lot of the conversations you have with a director or a casting person or an audio engineer or whoever's making the decision is just someone feeling you out to see, hey, is this guy a regular guy, or is he going to be some kind of weirdo? Is he going to be easy to work with? Can I be creative? Will he take direction? Will he change things, or is he locked into doing things one way? And I think once you get past that and you make friends, you just continue trying to have those relationships. So I really think it's just getting a few jobs and then just cultivating those relationships to create new ones.
And I like that you brought up YouTube and how has social media played a part in your career?
Well, I think all marketing is cumulative. So it's all about impressions, right? That's the marketing strategy. Is more times you see someone, the more times you hear someone's doing something, the more it sticks in your mind, So I do go out and kind of stalk casting directors that I'm working with or auditioning for, or film directors that I want to work with or that I have worked with, or other actors and actresses that I've worked with on the set that I feel might have a good opinion of me and want to continue knowing me. So I'll add them to my collective, and hopefully, if I post something, they're going to see it. It's going to stick in the back of their mind, and you just never know, because marketing is cumulative. So maybe someone I work with on a project for a video game sees that I post a picture of myself drinking a beer at the hot tub, and they say, hey, I'm about to work on this beer commercial and they need another guy. Maybe I'll call Ray up or have them call Ray up. It's just, you never know. You just put it out there and forget about it. You plant seeds.
That's pretty cool. That I think I hope for folks who are watching who are new to acting or kind of giving up, like, realize that even when there's no work coming to you, it doesn't mean that you can't keep working at the craft. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just said to a friend recently who's an actor that it's almost like you need to think of it like you're punching a time clock. Like, structure your day. Get up every morning at 9 or 10 and punch the clock figuratively. And even if you don't have an acting job to go to, sit down at your laptop and update your resume, do your submissions, send a thank you note out, go on your social media and stalk a few people that you want to work with, or, whatever your game is, however you can be productive that day. But put structure, do baby steps, put one foot after another and move towards the direction you want to go.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, and people have heard me say this on the show, when I talk about how I know my guests. Like you, there's a lot of friends that come on the show or come back on the show, and just my friends, like, hey, I want to hear your story, come and share it. But for those of you that don't follow the show regularly, I do stalk people. Like, I'll read something in an article, or I'll see something online. I'll be like, ooh, or even the news. I've had people that I'm watching the news in the morning. And I'm like, who is this person? I Google them and I start following them on all their pages and then send that email. I'm like, hey, I've been following you. I want you on my show. Will you come and share your story? And that's how you get it. So not stalking for the negative way, people. So hold your emails, but it is a networking tool.
It is. You create a relationship. There's a new service I just started using. It does lunch dates. I think you actually connected it to me, right? It was
Lunch club, yeah, lunch club.
Lunch club.
Yeah.
It's a nice little gig where they set you up with a lunch date on your frequency, and you have these kind of conversations with a complete stranger, but you're able to network even in a COVID environment, create new relationships.
I started Lunch Club in October of 2020 and have been on since. And some of the people that I've met, one, we've met some of them in person. We've been able to like double date with people who are traveling through or just gone out to lunch. Some of them have been on my show here to interview. Other folks I'm collaborating with projects on. And some of them are not even acting projects. They're like the spiritual work that I do or the advocacy work that I do. So for those of you that are not familiar with Lunch Club, I will post my link so you guys can follow it. But yeah, that's been a great resource. And the quality of people that you meet is really cool. Like, and yeah, I've met some cool directors. There's a couple of people that offer stuff. So
and I meant to thank you. Thank you for connecting me to that. I haven't had any miraculous experiences, but I have chatted with some interesting people. Sometimes they match you with someone who's completely out of your industry, who has no connection with what you're doing, or they have their agenda and they're kind of trying to find someone to match their agenda. But you never know. It's a conversation. It's maybe 20-30 minutes out of your day. You can schedule it like once a week, and if it's someone, you never know, you might meet someone that you have a great professional relationship with down the road.
Yeah. So again, for those of you who are interested in networking, meeting people, I will post my Lunch Club link on there. So we are at the point of the show where I ask my guests for some words of wisdom. So Ray Buffer, what words of wisdom do you have to share with the audience?
Just baby steps. I'll come back to that. It's like, if there's anyone out there who, I think one of the main things is don't convince yourself to give up by playing psychological games with yourself, telling yourself that, oh, they must not have liked me. Oh, my nose is too big, or my eyebrows are too furry, or, my ears are cockeyed, and so I'm never going to work in this industry or whatever. I should just give up. But don't create these fallacies. Accept yourself for who you are right now. Put yourself out there. There's a part somewhere for you. It's just a matter of throwing yourself out there until, the round peg finds the round hole. And, one step after another, you got to do something every day to propel yourself towards that goal. If you just sit at home and say, oh, it's not worth it, or it should just be a waste of my time. Well, it's more of a waste of your time to do nothing.
That was one thing that there was a time, well, after we talked earlier about cancer, like after cancer, I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And fortunately, Christian, my partner, was like, if you really want to go in strong, that's when I joined the union. But there's been times since then that, things kind of dry out, and I'm like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And I just feel like the universe has a way of testing us sometimes. It's like, are you really passionate about this? Do you really want it? Because I'm gonna leave you alone for a little bit. And then the moment I decided, like, I'm done with acting, I'm going back to work in a restaurant or an office. And it was like, hey, you got an audition. It's like, ah.
I think, diversification is important too. Like, I don't just go for acting jobs. I go for voiceover jobs. I go for singing jobs. I go for musician jobs. I'll be a model for a photographer for a job. You try to diversify, put as many irons in the fire as you can. And eventually, things start to happen, and you just try to get some momentum going. That's the important thing, is find the momentum and then keep riding it, and just keep doing what led to that momentum. And in theory, it should continue.
So with everything that you do, and I'm kind of like asking myself at the same time, but with everything that you're involved in, it takes a lot of time to invest in everything. How do you unwind, and what do you do when you have your downtime?
Well, thank goodness for this miracle device, this iPhone. It has a calendar that allows me to put everything in, even if it's a survival job that gets moved around several times. I I live by this. This is my Bible. So it tells me when I get up, I look at my calendar. Okay, these are the things I have to do. These are the holes I have to do whatever I want to do. This is my downtime. So I'll even put in my calendar, do your self tapes, and I'll list the number of self tapes I have to do, and if the deadline is that day or 2 days, I always try to structure it so that I'm at least a couple days before the deadline, if not as soon as I get it. Because the important thing with auditioning nowadays is to strike early, because sometimes casting directors make their choices based on the first few submissions they get, and they may not even open up the ones they get on the day of the deadline. So rule number one, submit as early as you can. Don't be too much of a perfectionist where you're retaking and retaking and retaking and retaking until you get it perfect, to the point where now you've just eliminated yourself because you submitted too late. Sometimes it's better just to throw it out there and let them decide if they see what they need to see. But during my downtime, I like to go to a hot tub, have a beer. I like to travel. Just before the pandemic, well, I made myself a promise that by the time I turned 50, I would have been to Europe. So the year of my 50th birthday, I went to Europe just before the pandemic. I had 11 countries scheduled to go to within 3 weeks, and I was just doing it solo trip with my backpack, Airbnbs, stay in one country 2 or 3 days, hop with a little plane to the next location. And I made it to 10 of the countries before I got locked down in Prague. And the lockdown happened. Everything was closed except grocery stores and tattoo parlors. So I got a tattoo.
Oh, there you go.
Of all the destinations I went to in Europe. And you'll see here, I think it says step forward. So that's my motto. That's where you're asking for wisdom. Baby steps, step forward. I stepped forward and I went to Europe. I treated myself to that trip. I got 95% of it done, got back safely, and that's what I do during my downtime.
That's very cool. What did you learn about yourself while doing this trip?
Well, what I liked was the whole fork in the road kind of thought, that I was choosing my own destiny. I could choose to walk from the airport and see everything on foot, or I could take an Uber, or I could go down this street or go down that street. It was just all completely random. And I could hop and skip and jump and fly from Nantes, France, and then go to Tangier, Morocco if I felt like it. And, it's just all very spontaneous and nice. And just seeing the old world and just seeing all that history. And what was nice too was also seeing how regionalized everything is. I didn't have a conception of it here living in the States, but when you go to Spain, you see how there are certain vegetables and flowers and colors that are special to that one region, and that figures into the whole culture and all the cuisine. And then you go to Austria and you see the same thing there, but it's a different combination of elements. And that was rewarding.
That's pretty cool. What's in the future? What are you working on?
I do have a little student film I'm shooting next week for think it's for Chapman University. It's a final thesis film called Feral Son, I think it's called. And I play a friend of a gentleman who has a feral son living in a cabin in the woods, and I'm visiting him on his birthday to try to cheer him up and do a little sanity check. I guess once a year sanity check. So that seems like a fun project. And then, I've got some TV shows that I'm hoping to hear back from. I did a show called Drawing Blanks by filmmaker Haslin Philippe. He's filmed his pilot and is getting ready to distribute it. And I will be a series regular on that when we do new episodes. Another show called Grounded, where I play a wannabe coffee musician. Hopefully that will also be taking off. So yeah, I'm looking forward to all of these projects coming out. Remember, that was the challenge. It's like so much is just sitting there waiting to be seen. A good example, before I run out of time, is the Vroom commercial that friends all over the States have been telling me, oh, I saw you during the football game in the Vroom commercial. I shot that thing back in June of last year. And come October of last year, I thought it was never going to come out. But I was proved wrong, because December, January, that thing's been playing continuously, mostly during football games.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't remember if it's Hulu or Paramount, but in one of those, I noted, I was watching, and then I was like, wait a minute, like I know who that is, and I have to remember what commercial it is, but I know it's you.
Well, it was for Vroom, yeah,
Is that what it is?
VROOM. And it was a woman with a puppet. She brings out a puppet to be her husband because she's being ignored by the salespeople.
That's it. That's the one. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, folks, yes, he's on that commercial. So, it took me a couple because they play it regularly, but it took me a couple of watching because, okay, for everybody, I'm a play on my phone while I'm watching TV kind of guy. But I heard the voice, and I was like, wait a minute, I know you. And then I was like, he's going to be on my show. Yes. Push that. We have about 8 minutes to go. I want to remind everybody we are talking today to actor, singer, and friend of the show, Mr. Ray Buffer. And we've been covering everything from acting and singing, entertainment, adoption, programs. Biggest lesson you've learned so far in your life?
Biggest lesson. Just not to give up, not to be, even when you're dealing with someone difficult, not to let them make you doubt yourself. I see even difficult people just as a challenge now. I'm mature enough now that I don't get triggered by them, and I can take a step back and realize they are what they are. And I see them as like just a challenge, just a reminder that sometimes I need to just take a deep breath and realize various people have various issues, and you just have to kind of, well, here, for instance, there was someone who was a mentor to me in the dinner theater world. And he was very demanding. Sometimes he could be very, very nice, very polite. And sometimes it was like he hated me, like with seething anger. But, you realize that sometimes you're just the punching bag. Sometimes it's not meant for you. Sometimes it's transference, or there are other things going on. And it actually made me value him more when I realized what the issues were, that it wasn't a personal attack on me. It was just emotion. And you have to kind of look at everyone in your life that way too. You have to realize that not everyone is perfect. Not everyone does the right thing all the time. And if you want to move forward in this kind of work, and you want to be thought of as someone who's easy to work with, you have to have some temperance. You have to be able to digest the environment that that person is in, and not let it trigger you.
Any plans for theater again, to produce or direct, or?
I'm open to it, but to be honest, that's one of the irons in the fire that I've been pursuing. If something came my way, the hard thing with theater is just that it pays so little. I see so many jobs out there where it's like a 3-week run with rehearsals, and it's like then I have to calculate, well, in 3 weeks I could be doing this many TV or film projects, and I'd be making this amount of money more. So I've had to turn some things down that I really would like to have done, but I just didn't want to limit myself that much because of the duration of a lot of theater projects.
Gotcha. Well, we're almost coming to the end of the show. Before we go, I want to remind all of you folks about some of the stuff that we do here on the channel. If you're a fan of Little Mexican Productions, Inc., remember that we have 3 shows on the air. Little Christian and Daniel on Wednesdays, 6-9 Eastern. The Card Divo on Fridays, 5-8 p.m. Eastern. And Put It Together, remember, starting from next week on, it's just noon, 3 o'clock. And make sure you check us out at littlemexicanproductions.com, hashtag Little Mexican Productions Inc., and check us out for all kinds of stuff. Our guest today was, again, singer, actor, and a friend of the show, Mr. Ray Buffer. Thank you for all the information, man. You're just, I could talk to you for hours. And we'll have to grab tacos at some point. And
yeah,
just
I love tacos.
Hey, who doesn't love tacos? And if you don't, why are you watching the show? No, please come back and watch the show. Please come back. Let us know what you're working on. We'd love to have you back on and chat with you.
I'll keep you posted. There's, like I say, it's so much on the back burner, just waiting for it to come out. I actually did a recording where I'm featured on someone's single. So they have a song that's going to be coming out on YouTube soon for a band called Tarzana Land. So hopefully you'll see that coming out featuring Ray Buffer.
Sweet.
So
make sure to send it to us when it comes out, and we'll post it on our page.
Yeah, sure thing.
But for now, thank you so much. And I look forward to maybe one day we'll get to work together. So
that would be great. I'm sure there's some crossover. We can find some crossover.
I'm sure somebody out there is watching us right now going, these guys would be amazing together. It's like, amazing. So, I'm going to put you in the green room. I'll be back for you in just a second. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure seeing you again.
Everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. Again, another episode of Put It Together. Great friend, Mr. Ray Buffer. Make sure you check him out. Remember his website. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to. There you go. That's his website right there. Go check it out. RayBuffer.com. Check him out for all of information on what he's working on, what he's doing. If you want to work with him, check him out there. For now, I want to thank all of you for watching. Remember, starting next week, we only have one episode of Put It Together at noon. So make sure you check us out. More shows coming. If you would like to be a guest on Put It Together and have a story you want to share, message me in whatever of the platforms you're watching. If you know somebody that would have a great Put It Together story, please refer them over to us. And again, use the channel that you're on to message us. If you're watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, please share this on your page so that other people can watch it. If you're watching us on YouTube, do me a favor, scroll down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll let you know whenever something new pops up. And remember, we have something almost every day of the week. So make sure that you join us. For now, I want to thank y'all for watching. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is Put It Together. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.